Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. It's Laura for the Wow Embossing channel today, and I'm back with a really fun technique using the Pastel Pearls powders by Marion Embossing. This is a new trio, and you've got a hint of pink, a hint of blue, and a hint of green. On the surface, they look like white clear embossing powder, but when we look at the swatches that I've got on the black cardstock and the white cardstock, you can see that shimmery pearl effect that it creates. And so what I'm going to do in today's video is we're going to make two cards, but first of all I'm going to show you these embossing powders on a variety of different coloured cardstock using some scraps from my stash. So this is a great stash buster technique if you've got lots of scraps and you want to use them up. And yeah, we're going to see how the powders look on the different colours. And I was quite surprised by some of them. Some of them gave the effect that I thought they would, others were quite surprising, and I really found that the darker colour cardstock seemed to show up the powders best. So yeah, you can let me know in the comments below what you think at the end of this video. So here's the craft cardstock. I've popped some of the colours on each of the sections of the card panel, and I'm just going to heat set it with my heat tool. And here you can see on the left we've got that hint of blue, in the middle we've got the hint of pink, and on the right we've got the hint of green. So you can see how you get that lovely pearlescent effect and how the colours really show up on the craft cardstock. So I've got a lovely scrap of bright blue card here. Now this was interesting because actually the hint of blue really kind of made the blue stand out. The hint of pink kind of turned a bit red, and the hint of green kind of got a little bit lost on the blue cardstock. So that was interesting. So it's a great way of really kind of making the colour that the powder is stand out on the card that you're using. So here's some holographic cardstock, and this was quite surprising because it kind of gave it a matte finish. So you ended up with a pearlescent matte finish. You can just about make out the hint of pink on the far right, but the blue and green kind of got lost in amongst itself. So here's the hint of gold, and again, on the metallic cardstock, it just goes like matte, pearlescent matte. So that was interesting, and I certainly wouldn't recommend wasting holographic cardstock doing this, but it was great for using up those scraps. Now the red cardstock was interesting as well because it kind of, from the hint of blue, it really brought out purple tones, and from the hint of pink, I don't know if you can really see it 100% on the camera. I think you can kind of get a hint of it there, but yeah, this was really interesting. I loved the purple tones that came through, and then the hint of green really kind of dulled it down, and you got that pearly, creamy finish. Now, the burgundy cardstock scrap that I'm using here was quite stunning. You really could see the colours stand out. So I just missed a little bit there, so I just went back in with my heat gun. But you can really see the hint of blue, hint of green, hint of pink, and the purpley tones that came out in the hint of pink. So yeah, that was surprising. Now I'm using this lovely kind of green coloured cardstock, and again the colours kind of get a little bit lost on this one. The hint of pink stands out, but not in the best way, and then the blue and the green kind of get lost in amongst each other. So next we're going to try it on the navy blue cardstock, and again, because this was a darker cardstock, the colours really popped, so you could really see those three distinct colours, and I loved the effect that that gave. Next I had a scrap of holographic pink cardstock, and again with the holographic cardstock it just completely made it matte, so it gave it kind of that matte look, but the colours do get a little bit lost, but not in the same way as it did on the gold or the holographic, so that was interesting. Then I've got two very pale pink colours cardstock scraps. So I did both of these together, and the pearlescent colours do very subtly show. I think it shows up better on the second piece of card that I'm going to show you in a moment, where you can just really make out the hint of blue to the left, the hint of green in the middle, and the hint of pink to the right. So it's very, very subtle, and it just is a very pretty effect. So I've gone ahead and done a whole lot of die cutting using the Paper Roses Lots of Birds die set. And when I've die cut, I've made sure to kind of overlap the colours. So for example, on that little bird, you can just see the hint of blue on its belly. I'm just going to show you this one because this is quite a stark contrast. So you've got that lovely hint of pink at the bottom and the hint of blue at the top. And then I've done this on a few of the birds. Some of them are just one colour, some of them have got the variation. And I just think it's a really nice way of adding a little bit of extra interest to these die cuts. So Let's go ahead and turn them into cards. So I've got 2 card panels that are A6 in size, and I'm just going to emboss them. I've got 2 Gina K Designs embossing folders, one which is Lattice, and then the other is Swiss Dots. And I'm just going to run those through my Sizzix Big Shot machine and emboss those panels. I'm then going to do the same with some of the birds. So I'm just adding a few of the birds into the embossing folder and running that through. So you get like a double embossed effect. You've got the heat embossing and then the dry embossing. And yeah, this added a really nice fun texture and interest to the birds as well. Of course, you could do stamping on them before you heat emboss them, or you could stamp over the top of the heat embossing using something like Stays On ink, or you could even double emboss over the top. So you could stamp an image or some text and then heat emboss that in another colour. So there's lots of different ways that you could do this. But I've got these embossing folders. I really wanted to use them today. So once I've done that and I've got a few different variations of embossing on the birds, we can then start to put the cards together. So I'm just going to add some glue to the back of this embossed panel, and I'm going to attach that to a layer of navy blue cardstock so that it's got a nice matting layer. And then I'm going to play around with the placement of the birds. Now I decided to add some foam tape to the back of them, and then I'm able just to leave the backing tape on for now while we just play around with the placement. I'm going to do the same with the smaller birds as well. And then in order for them to fit on nicely once the foam tape's on, I do need to do a little bit of cutting to some of the tails of the birds just so that I can tuck them underneath each other. It really doesn't affect the way they look. You won't really see that on the card. And then I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to some of the smaller birds as well, and then just pop them over the top of the larger birds. And I do add double tape to those so that they sit over the top. Once we finish that panel, I'm going to do exactly the same with the other panel. This time I'm using a matting layer in pale pink cardstock, and then I'm going to layer up the birds in exactly the same way. So adding foam tape to the back of the birds and then just making sure that I'm happy with the placement. So those are the 2 card panels finished. So to add a sentiment, I'm going to use these stitched banner dies from Paper Rose Studios. And I'm going to use this sentiment stamp set from Hero Arts. And I'm going to use a couple of the sentiments, and I'm going to add some heat embossing to these. So first of all, I'm just using my anti-static powder bag on the banners, and then I'm inking up the thank you sentiment with the WowEmbossing Ink Pad. Once I've stamped that, I'm going to stamp the other stamp as well while I've got the embossing ink ready. So I'm going to use the Thinking of You stamp for this one, and then I'm going to heat emboss these in 2 different colours. For the navy blue card, I'm going to use the polished silver embossing powder, and then for the pale pink one, I thought I would use the platinum embossing powder, but you'll see a little bit later on that I changed my mind and we end up using the polished gold, and there's a reason for that, and I'll show you in a second. So I'm just going to pop the excess back in the pots, heat up my heat gun on the second setting, so that's the hottest setting, and then I'm just going to heat set those quickly. It doesn't take long. Now the platinum sentiment, it looks lovely, but it just doesn't stand out enough. So I redo it in gold, and I just think that that looks a little bit bolder. The platinum is gorgeous, but I just think for this card, I really wanted the sentiment to stand out a little bit more. So I've just brought in my Tim Holtz trimmer, and I'm just going to trim off the excess from the banner dies so that they fit nicely on the edge of the card. So I'm going to do that for both of those. Again, I'm just kind of working out exactly how short it needs to be. Just eyeballing it really, there's no need to measure. And then I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of these and then just pop them up. The reason I'm adding a liquid glue onto the back is just so that I've got a little bit of wiggle room, because I really want to make sure my sentiments are nice and straight, and adding liquid glue to your foam tape just allows you to move it around a little bit before you press it down and stick it in place. So next I'm just going to attach those down to card blanks. So I've got some A6 card blanks, and I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive here. You could of course add more foam tape if you prefer, but obviously we have got a lot of dimension already with the birds, or you could use a tape runner or double-sided sticky tape if you prefer to use that. And then just to finish off my cards, I'm just going to add a few enamel dots to finish. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Wow Embossing channel. Please don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and please don't forget to subscribe as well. Remember, in the description box below there'll be a link to the blog post for this tutorial and also all the products that I've used in today's video. If you want to find me on my own channel, then you can find me at Meerkat Makes by Elle, Cards by Laura, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box below as well. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.